I wonder if you guys have heard of Louise Haye. So this is actually a quite intense story. When she was 14 years old, she ran away from her home because she was sexually abused by her dad and her brother. And she ended up in New York becoming a prostitute. And then she had a client that was inviting her to these self-help groups where they were talking about positive thinking and how you can change your reality with the way you think and the way you understand yourself. So this was back in the early 90s, and she eventually got out of the industry, but then she still had a lot of friends that was in the industry, and a lot of them were really suffering because either they had AIDS or they had friends dying from AIDS. So I don't know if you remember back in the 90s, but how big it was. And so she started her own support group on Thursday evenings. And the first week, I think there were something like 6 people, and then within 7 months, it grew to 600 people or something that gathered every week. And what they used to do is, just in a big hallway, they would all sit on the ground, and she would walk around with a microphone and allow people to speak about either what illnesses they were struggling with or what emotional problems they were having. And then she started realizing that the people with the same illness are experiencing the same emotional difficulty. And she started documenting this. And she ended up with this little booklet, alphabetically listing all the illnesses or diseases and with what emotional incoherent state is responsible for that. So acne, biliary, cancer, diabetes. And she did this little booklet, and then she would send it off to all the AA meetings, to church groups, to women's support groups, anybody that was working with people. And say to them, look, there's a direct correlation. If you can help your people shift through their emotional stuff, then it won't manifest in physical. It's when it's left, this emotional trauma continues to play out, but it then manifests in physical. And that's basically how Hay House Publications started, which is now the biggest publication house for the self-help industry, for wellness industry, for holistic, even the spiritual community. All the big name authors published through Hay House. She passed away. There was a TED talk when she was in her 80s she was standing there saying that her 80s has been the best decade of her life. It's just been so wonderful. Her famous book is Heal Your Life. So she put this awareness into the collective consciousness. And then a lady called Caroline Mice took it a little bit further. She's a journalist, also from America. She traveled way north to Canada for an assignment, and then somehow in the middle of the night ended up lost or something, knocking on this door, and this very old elder Inuit lady opened the door and told her, do you know you have a gift to read people and know what's wrong with them? And she's like, maybe, I'm not sure. So she went back to America, started helping her colleagues in the office and her friends, helping them to understand why they have physical discomfort or why they're having illnesses. So this is called medical intuitive. So she did these readings and more, and she ended up at this holistic health conference in America, and she was seated at the table with Dr. Norman Shealy, which is the head of a holistic health association in America. And he turned to her and he said, Caroline, someone tells me you're a medical intuitive. Are you any good? And she's like, shit, I don't know, maybe. He says, okay, I'm going to try you out. So one day the phone rings, she answers the phone. He says to her, I've got this young gentleman sitting in front of me. He's 28 years old. We've done all the Western allopathic tests that we can do. We've done the MRI scans, the blood scans, everything. We don't know what's wrong with this guy. But clearly he's ill. And she immediately says, throat cancer. He's a dentist. He wants to be a farmer. He's too scared to go home and tell his wife and daughters that he wants to move out of the city and become a farmer. And from that day on, they established this joint practice, and they also started doing workshops all over America, and just really teaching people of how to understand this idea that all physical illnesses start with an emotional belief or an emotional build-up, and usually underlying the emotional build-up is a limiting belief pattern. It's a fear of the future, it's an insecurity where you believe you're not worthy, it's a feeling or a knowing that you'll never be good enough. By the way, for autoimmune conditions, that's always what we refer back to. So, but what Caroline Myss was really, really good at was taking her knowledge of investigating in journalism and applying it to understand how can we further this field of understanding and make it more practical for people to bring into their everyday awareness. Now, she's from a Catholic background, and she then started to study different religions to see if there's any evidence of this. And she found that in the Kabbalah Tree of Life, there's a direct awareness about this. She found it in the Christian 7 sacraments and in the old Vedic Indian scriptures about the 7 chakras. So then she wrote her first book, The Anatomy of Spirit, that sold millions and millions and millions of copies, helping people to understand how these belief patterns and this emotional build-up is directly affecting your body in certain areas. So if we look at the root chakra, this is all to do with survival. So if you have scarcity, fear of not having enough, fear of not making it, you're going to have problems related to your root chakra. Hemorrhoids, bladder infection. If you look at the second chakra, the sacral, it's all about your relationship to other people. So here you find guilt, resentment, disappointment, frustration by the gut issues. Now if you think about children also, when they come in, all they do is they develop the root chakra. It's all about survival. I need my milk and I need it now. I need to poo, I need to poo now, you know. It's all about survival. And then as they mature and they become young, out of a toddler phase, they're starting to experiment with who am I in relation to the other. And that's all about that development of the sacral chakra. How do I relate to others? How do others affect me? How do I affect others? And then we come to the solar plexus, where in the young tween years, you form the identity of a self. Who am I? When is it a me problem? And when is it a you problem? Because our society have also created a lot of distortions here, where they say you always have to be the lesser, always turn the other cheek, always take all the responsibility on yourself and think you're the problem. It's like this typical thing that I call the good girl complex. And that can create a lot of issues at the solar plexus level. And then we have the heart center. The heart center is your ability to love and receive love. The throat center, it's all about communicating your truth. Some people say yes when they actually desperately wanted to say no, but they're not able to say no. Speaking your truth. And that's why we see so much thyroid problems, because it's all related to the throat chakra. And then in the eye center, it's about your worries about the future or your regret about the past. It's all in this field of the eye. So if you look at myopia, it's fear of the future. And then the crown chakra is how you feel supported and connected. Able to bring in energy through the crown chakra, down into the earth. It bounces into Mother Earth, and that energy, that nurturing, supportive energy helps you to bounce up. And that's when you have that lightness in your feet, that, we call it in Afrikaans, huppel in my stap. I don't know in English what the word is, but you know what I'm talking about. So then, okay, so now we know that everything's related with the chakras. And then the lady that is the founder of biofield tuning, it's the sound healing modality that I do with the tuning forks. Her name's Eileen McCusick, and she's from Vermont. She took it one step further. So she used to massage people, and then she ordered a set of tuning forks, just like on intuitive heat. And at that time, people were only using the tuning forks over the chakras because they already understood that it's an energy center, like an energy vortex. And the idea was just to entrain it with a more coherent state of frequency. So if you think back at school, you'll remember from science that the object will continue its path of oscillation until the external force is injected into the field, and then it will change its path of oscillation. So this is the same thing. You're bringing in a more coherent frequency, so we use the Solvecchio and the Schumann's frequencies. So one day, Aline McCusick walks into the room and she activates the fork like a meter from the client. And she listens to the tone, ooh. And she's like, wow, there's interference here. What interference changed the tone? And then when she did it again into the same thing, boo, she reads a memory. And she's like, wow, I'm in the field of a client reading a memory. So what she discovered over many years is that we are actually storing our memories in our field. And it's like 3 rings. So halfway in your field is when you were halfway of your age. So if you're 30, when you were 15 will be halfway. And at the edge of your field, it's when you were in the womb and birth. And we stored memories related to different experiences. For instance, if you had issues with survival, let's say your parents were very poor, all those experiences will be stored on the sides of the root chakra. So this knowledge is so amazing, because what Aline McCusick did was she started fundraising to start her own institute where people can do the research, professors and researchers, to get the quantitative and qualitative data to make this a provable modality in the scientific field. And it's just so amazing, because biofield tuning also works with root cause. We have the ancestral rivers running beside the body like that. So when we are doing clearing on the field, let's say on the throat chakra, and we are clearing all the distortions, the buildup of emotions, the holding on to belief patterns, the density that's creating the distortions in the field, we clear it with the tuning forks. We can even go into the ancestral river, and if there's anything there that we need to clear at root cause, we clear it with the tuning forks and then drop it into the throat chakra, and what we call then we mix the paint, and that highest frequency state then spreads throughout the field, allowing you to be more coherent. And when you're more coherent, you have strength, you have courage, you have love in your heart. You don't get triggered so easily. You can tap into your intuition, into your mother's instinct. You can be more vulnerable. When you feel an emotion, it can enable you to take action. It's where it could be debilitating. Now it becomes active. It's a driving force. It's dynamic. So I invite you guys to also come into sessions with me and explore where in your field do you still have a stagnancy that's holding you back, that's keeping you in a pattern of reoccurring experiences, that you feel stuck and you just cannot move forward. These modalities, these techniques are there to help you to shift easily and effortlessly. The effects are lasting. Unless you have a new trauma event, you could create new trauma. But otherwise than that, it's lasting effects. So thank you very much for sharing this time with me, and I hope to meet all of you soon.